Yes, thank you, Madam President. Would the sponsor yield for a question?
Would the sponsor yield?
Through you, Madam President, yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. Hello, Senator Kaminsky. Thank you very much. I understand the goal here is to preserve as much of our beautiful New York State lands as possible for future generations. But my first question for you is, do you know what percentage of New York State land right now is already considered to be preserved or conserved?
It's about 19%. Yeah, through you, Madam President, about 20%.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. Will the sponsor yield for another question?
Yes.
Would the sponsor yields?
Yes. Through you, Madam President. So with that being said, I can tell you that most of that is actually located in the Adirondack Park and Catskill regions in our beautiful upstate region. And for being the fourth most populous state in the nation to already be at 20% is pretty impressive to begin with. So my next question is, do we know how much of the remaining land in New York State is actually eligible to be conserved?
Through you, Madam President, there is no land that is, by definition, something that, is set aside to be conserved. There's a process that's a public, transparent process to decide which of the lands would be considered to get us to the next 10% over the next 9 or so years. So we certainly believe that there's well above another 10% to be conserved, but where that is and what that is a process to be determined.
Okay. Thank you. Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Thank you. Through you, Madam President. So I do have some concerns on this, on what would actually be defined as to be conserved. Because right now, and because I specifically note the idea of addressing climate change. So my question is, would clear-cutting acres, thousands and thousands of acres of forest, which are already sequestering carbon naturally, clearing those lands, erecting gigantic structures made out of fiberglass and steel, pouring millions and millions of yards of concrete, would that be considered conserving the land, in your opinion?
Yeah, through you, Madam President, I think we're trying to figure out how to conserve 10% more land than what we have now. So I think common sense dictates that it would certainly, harm that goal and, move us backwards if we started to reduce that amount of land through some broad overall structural policies. Of course, every day there are fits and starts or gains and retreats in terms of development and conservation. We certainly know, for example, in my district on the shoreline, there are areas that used to be built up that some are, after Superstorm Sandy, have been left in a more natural state that would push in the other direction. So, of course, one of the things that DEC will do is assess where we are to figure out where we need to go. But it's important to have these aspirational tools so we can do correct planning and figure out where the state wants to be and set a trajectory to get there.
Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
The sponsor yield.
Yes.
Yes.
The sponsor
Yes,
yields.
thank you. Through you, Madam President. So I understand what you're saying, and I think we can agree on a lot of this. But what I'm specifically asking is, we have all of these green energy speculators out there, the people that are responsible right now for deforesting our natural lands, for having DEC make exceptions to our rules on destroying natural habitats, and making exceptions to the rules in killing our endangered and threatened species, all for the idea that we want to put up more of these industrial wind turbines and solar panels that are made with, as I mentioned, fiberglass, which has to be buried somewhere after its useful life, which has to be, you have rare earth metals, which are mined under horrible environmental and human conditions in places like China, all to advance this agenda to bring more so-called green energy. So my question is, the idea of industrializing our beautiful land, is that considered conserving the land under this bill?
Through you, Madam President, I certainly don't think this bill were to dictate that result. And of course, we want to avoid, whenever we can, having to choose between producing more green energy and hurting natural resources in the process. We had that on Long Island when someone produced a solar field in the Pine Barrens, which was something that was extremely problematic. So we have to be able to walk and chew gum. We have to be able to do both. We have to be able to build our green energy reserves consistent with the CLCPA. Those goals are aggressive, but they're necessary. And at the same time, gain the ability to protect land to the tune of 10% over the next 9 years. We have to be able to do both. So I think this would help your concerns, because what this is telling the state is you figure out how we're going to get 10% more over 9 years, and consider everything you're doing in that process. I think if you just leave it up to as a catch as catch can, or we'll go on, we'll do things here and there, and it'll all add up to something, is not smart. I think our state's previous decisions, especially with the Adirondacks, have been very helpful in getting us to where we are now. That's not an accident. Those were decisions made with great forethought and extreme precise planning. That's what we want the state to do, and this is simply aspirational. This will guide the state in figuring that out. And of course, every time we're clearing virgin timber, we are obviously making a trade that is inimical to the best interests of our state. We should avoid whenever we can. So I think this would help those concerns.
Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yield. The sponsor
Thank you.
yields.
Through you, Madam President. Senator Kaminsky, I'm very glad to hear you say that because it is a big concern. So I guess because oftentimes with these bills, we really, the regulators, the people in the bureaucracy of New York State government don't really know what our intent was. So I'm hoping what I'm hearing is that you're saying that the whole idea of deforesting and industrializing our beautiful natural land would not be considered attaining and addressing the goals of your bill. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam President, I don't see how that could be the case. If you are trying to say that land that used to be virgin timber is now chopped down and turned into a form of energy production, is then considered conserved, that would not make any sense to me.
Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
The
Yes.
sponsor yields.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear you say that because that is a concern of mine. Unfortunately, I am concerned that it could still be interpreted that way, but I'm glad that we're having this discussion today so we can ensure that that doesn't happen. My next question is about farmland. You know, New York State is actually the #1 industry in New York is actually agriculture, and we have, thousands upon thousands of farms across millions of acres in New York State. So would a working farm be considered land that has been preserved or conserved under this bill?
Through you, Madam President, I mean, not currently as it exists right now, but part of what this bill's goal is to do is to preserve more agricultural and farmland. That's clearly delineated out as something the DEC must try to use through their land acquisition policy and through other policies. So the whole idea of this is to preserve more land for agriculture and farming. That could be done in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be through the use of acquisitions, through the Bond Act, or through the EPF, or through other ways the state obtains land. There's obviously ways the state can facilitate that something can turn into agriculture or farmland to then be considered for this. So you could imagine a certain piece of property that used to have another, let's say, more industrial purpose, then becomes for agriculture and farming, and then we say, all right, great, we've now conserved that for agriculture and farming. But I don't think that you could say that something that exists right now under this bill, boom, is all of a sudden, by dint of the signature on this legislation, becomes part of the conservation of New York State.
Thank you. Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
The sponsor yield.
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So I want to turn to our lakes and waterways, which are also a subject of concern for me. I know at the federal level, with the President Biden's trying to address conserving 30% of all America's lands to be natural and conserved, they also include waterways. And here in New York State, we are really blessed with so many lakes and waterways that provide so much to us: drinking water, the source of energy, and even things like down on Long Island, you've got that wonderful aquaculture farm that has revitalized that industry on Long Island. So my question is, would this bill also address our lakes and waterways as well as the land?
Through you, Madam President, yes, it would. It would address lakes and waterways. It would not address the federal 30 by 30 ocean goal, because those are largely federal waters.
Okay.